Welcome again, and thank you for joining the Global Webinar Day here at Infosim. Our topic for today's webinar is StableNet 8.2, Enhance Your Workflow. My name is Dietmar Kneidl, Director of Sales Europe with Infosim, and I will be moderating today's event. Joining us from our headquarter office in Würzburg, Germany is my colleague Vlad Singeorzan. Vlad is a senior developer and consultant. He has a master's degree in computer science from the University of Würzburg and has been with us for over 5 years now. So, good afternoon to you, Vlad, and welcome to the webinar.
Good afternoon, Dietmar. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm happy to be presenting to you today. It's been a while since I've held the last webinar, so more than happy to do this again today.
Well, I hope you still know how to do that, but since we've done our morning session for the Asia Pacific region already at 9 o'clock German time this morning, I'm pretty sure you will do fine. Well, before I hand over control to Vlad, just a couple of remarks. First off, as most of you probably know, we're doing our webinars with a muted audience in order to keep down the background noise. So if you have questions, please type them in the chat or questions window of the GoToWebinar application, and we'll be taking care of those questions either directly in the chat during the webinar or at the end in our Q&A session. We're also recording the webinar, and everybody who has registered, which I assume is everybody in the attendees room right now, will get an email including a link to that recording. That's all from my list, so I'd like to go ahead, hand over the screen to our presenter, Vlad Singeorzan. Vlad, you ready?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Dietmar. Good afternoon again from my side as well. The topic of today's webinar will be StableNet 8.2, as already mentioned. And before we start, let us take a short view on the agenda today. First, I want to show you some of the new features that we have since StableNet 8.0. Then we'll take a look at the new features in StableNet 8.2. In general way, an overview. Then we will take a more detailed look at two special features, the new flow analysis and the new template-based SNMP live data feature, followed by a demonstration where I will show you these features live on the product. And at the very end, we will have a short Q&A session.
Perhaps one more remark from my side, Vlad. I'm sorry to interrupt. We will probably overstep our time limit by a couple of minutes due to the amount of information we have from you, but it's not going to be much longer than 5 minutes, so we apologize in advance. It's not that Vlad, if Vlad would talk any faster, probably nobody would understand, so it takes a little while. Okay, handing back to you, Vlad, sorry.
Thank you, Dietmar, for the remarks. So I will do my best not to take more than 5 minutes. Of the allocated time. Okay, let's start right ahead. So in March this year, we released StableNet version 8. And I know a lot of you already tested it. Many of you have already have this StableNet version running in the labs. But I want to use this opportunity to give an overview of the new important features that we have in StableNet 8.0. And this would be mainly two very important features, the tagging and grouping, which will allow you to, using tags to group elements, to use the tags for filtering, to improve your workflow in a general way. And then, of course, the unified service visualization, the new service analyzer to be able to view services multi-layer across several vendors with an end-to-end view, a real end-to-end view. In addition to these, which were the main two features of the new StableNet 8 release, we had some other improvements as well. For example, in the weather maps, we have a whole new graphical engine that is used to draw the weather maps, and we also have a lot of new features there. For example, you can now also integrate table data in the weather maps. I will show a little bit of this later on, but it will not be the main topic of the live demonstration. Then we had, of course, some other usability improvements. There was a great improvement on our support for VMware and ESX, meaning that we've changed the underlying infrastructure. It now technically uses external measurements, and it also supports the latest version 6.5. And last but not least, we also had some extensions in the dashboard section where we added new widgets, and I will also show a little bit of the new widgets today in the live demo part. These are features that are already available in StableNet 8.1, for example. So you could install it even today and take a look at it if you haven't. The 8.2 release has, of course, some new features. The main feature would be the new flow analysis. Here we have a new agent module for processing and analyzing the NetFlow data, which brings better performance, improved performance. It also improves the NAT support, especially interesting for MSPs. And it also includes, of course, the template support for NetFlow version 9 or IPFix. Then we have the already mentioned SNMP live data view for devices based on templates. We further improved the weather maps. I will show a little bit of this in the live demo. And again, usability improvements as always. We also greatly improved the connectivity discovery and the auto-linking in StableNet so that this will be more accurate. I know some of you had maybe some minor issues in the past. This should work now a lot better. And last point here, we also extended the reporting. It's better integrated with the tagging now, and we also added some new chart types. And in the next few slides, we want to take a look at, as I said, two of these features, the flow analysis. First, as discussed, we have a new agent module that is used to process the flow data. And based on that, we also have, as I mentioned, improved performance. And based on that, we can also extend the flow query analyzer. Now, at the first glance, it might look very similar. It is similar to the old one, but we will see that the functionality has been greatly extended. This is especially true for filtering. We have now advanced filtering. In the past, you were able to filter, but the filter possibilities were a little bit limited. You could filter on an IP address, but the filter would be applied to either end of the flow. And also, you couldn't create complicated logical filters like AND, OR, and so on. This is possible now. You can assign dedicated filters for both ends of the flow. So you can say filter on a flow where one end is 10.11.11.1 and the other one is 10.1.2.10, for example. And it also allows for complex logic. So AND and OR is possible there. We also have added drill-down capabilities, and I also know this is something that some of you have asked for in the past. It will be available now, so you can easily drill down based on one view in the NetFlow. You can drill down to another view. Technically, this will apply the filter so that you can work with the filter data from there on, and I will show how this works in the live demo part later on. To be able to implement this filtering and drill down, we use internally a flow query language that you can also use for filtering. I will show a little bit of this in the demo as well. And you can also find it in documentation. It's quite complex, but it also provides a lot of functionality, of course. And last point, also very important, we added a new module to our REST API so that you can use the flow functionality also via our REST API. So you can get the raw data from NetFlow, or you can get filtered charts, or the charts that you can see in the flow query analyzer. I will show a little bit of this also later on. We will see more of this in the live demo, so I don't think it makes sense to explain too much about the charts right now. So let us move on to the template-based SNMP live data. What is this all about? Well, it's displaying data from SNMP tables on demand for a selected device. This means you select the device in StableNet, you select from the context menu the live SNMP data, and then based on templates, you can select which tables you want to display. The data will be queried on demand, and it will be displayed in the GUI. The data will, however, not be stored in the database, or it's not linked to a measurement, so it's completely independent of any measurements. You can use it, for example, for debugging. Let's say you have a technician who is in field and tries to fix something on a device, and somebody from outside needs to take a look to see when is the device going to be up again, or something like this. I guess debugging will be the main use case here. To be able to add new tables to the view, we offer templates. We ship some templates with the product, but you are also able to define your own templates. And I will show you how the syntax is a little bit later on. And an important thing about the SNMP live data is also that it comes with live updates, and you can select up to 10 seconds interval for the data refresh. So you will have a live view on the device if you require it. And it also comes with color highlighting. So in the templates, you will be able to define color highlighting. For example, if the interface status is up, it might be green. And if the interface status is down, it might be highlighted as red to draw your attention to this. So enough said about the SNMP live data. Let's move on now to the more interesting part, the live demo. I will switch to the StableNet GUI for this. So I have a GUI here, here in our lab in Würzburg. And to begin with, I will switch to the agents view because I want to start with the flow query. And we have it here. I will select an agent. Maybe you notice now that this field is underlined with the reddish color. This is part of our usability improvement. So in all dialogues, you will be hinted where you need input before you can proceed. This greatly helps with using the product, I think. And I will select the Linux agent because I know that this is the agent that will receive NetFlow data here on the system. And on the first glance, you will see that you have all the functionality that you already knew from the flow query analyzer. So you can select the top N level, you can select the time interval. I'll set it a little bit lower so that the data will load faster, 60 minutes. You can also specify an offset. Oops, that was the whole description for the filters that you can specify. So you can see even from here that the filters are very powerful. Then specifying the filters, of course, you can select if you want to see the data as a table or as a chart. You can turn on or off DNS resolution and so on. We also have the possibility to display time charts if you want. But let's start by first plotting some data. Of course, I will be looking at the last 60 minutes on NetFlow data that is here in our lab. So don't expect very much traffic, but we will see how this looks in detail in a bit. I will also remove the total bar because it makes it a little bit easier to read. So we have the raw data right here. And we have the charts that you are used to, so the top talkers, the top hosts, top networks, top connections, and so on. We have the top interfaces, and here the labeling was greatly improved. So before you had the interface index that comes from NetFlow, which is nice, but the context was a little bit missing. So now we are also displaying the device name and the interface name so that you can identify where traffic originates from and where it's going to. We have the services as before, either as bar chart or as a pie. We have the top protocols, the top QoS classes used, and especially for MSPs or telcos or bigger networks than our lab here, the AS numbers, but this is not very interesting here in our lab since we don't use different ISs. And based on this data, you can also apply filters. Before we do that, maybe just take a short look at the data. You can see here, if I click on flows, this is the old flow history graph that was available before here in the GUI right below the flow query, you can see all the raw data, and this is linked to the data that I see here in the graph, so it is very useful for debugging purposes. So you can see here all the raw NetFlow packets that were received. You can see the time interval here, and you can also, by clicking previous or next, jump around on the time axis. And it's important, this will also be filtered if we specify filters. We could, of course, start and type some filters here, things like IP address or network, so something like this. Network equals, then our router lab network 10.11.00/16, and maybe also increase the top N level. Now we have 20 bars, and I can click plot here. The data will be updated, and in this case, if I clicked on the flow here, the data will also be filtered, so I will only see flows that are originating or going to this network. We can test it real quick. It'll take a little bit for the data to load, but you can see here on the IPs, so you can see the source IP, the destination IP, source and destination port, and you can see here that that data is flowing to or from this network, so it has been filtered. Of course, we could start now and type all complex filters. You can see here the description. We can type and or and so on. So we could do something like and port equals, and then maybe 5100 for the agent, and I can click plot, and the data will be filtered accordingly. And you can specify complex logic. You can specify and ors, link them. You can use brackets and so on. So now we will see only data that is going to agents. So if you go, for example, on the services PI, you can see that it's only a port 5100 and TCP and UDP, sorry, as expected. TCP, many of you know, that's the default port for communication between server and agent. UDP, the agents in the lab are also receiving NetFlow data, and UDP 5100 is the default port where we receive the NetFlow data actually. But I mentioned before, and we should take a look at this next, you can also do drill down. So it's not always necessary to type in any filters, but you can also select drill down. I will go back to the unfiltered data for now, and we can start looking at different talkers or different services. Let's start with talkers, for example. So we can take a look at this, and the moment I click here, you will see the filter has been applied down here, and now you can see what I was talking about earlier. We can filter on both ends of the flow, 10.11.11.130 and 10.11.102. And the moment I click on plot, all the data will be filtered on this IP addresses, and I will only see data between these two IP addresses. This is also an improvement from before. And now we can take a look at the hosts, and nothing really surprising here. We just have these two hosts, but we can take a look at the different connections. So we can see which different connections there are between these two hosts. So this is typical thing that you will be looking at for debugging, for example. Again, we can take a look at the interfaces. Now it seems that it's only one interface in this case. Nothing very special. We can take a look at the used services. We have HTTPS and ICMP. This is the one of the IPs is the StableNet server that we're actually using for the demo. You can see it here. So no wonder that we're using that we have HTTPS, because I'm connected via the GUI via HTTPS to the server. We can also take a look at the used protocols. For example, it will be mainly TCP and a little bit of ICMP. And if we look at the QoS classes, also a similar picture. Most of the traffic will be default, and I think the ICMP traffic uses a different QoS class, so it is CS6. And if you want to take a closer look at this, now you can just do a further drill down. You can click on here, and then here you can see this has been added to our filter. I can click plot, and now I can see which traffic is between the 10.11.11.130 and 10.11.102 IP addresses using the QoS class CS6, for example. So if I go to the services, now I see it's only ICMP. And if I look at the connections, for example, I can see which connections actually use these traffic values. Let us reset the filters again, one last time. And there are a lot of more different possibilities to drill down, but because the time is limited here, I want to move on. Feel free to test this for yourself. Let us know if you have any questions. And depending also on your feedback, we might even have a dedicated webinar maybe where we can show this in more detail. What I also want to show you is the time chart. So we can have a time chart, for example, for every 5 minutes. So we should have 12 bars for the last 60 minutes. And this has been also improved, especially for flows that go over a longer period of time. So in this case, the traffic will be evenly distributed on the different time intervals here, and we can also increase this interval if you want. So we are looking at 5 now. You can see all the different traffic here in the lab, and we can also take a look, for example, at 1 minute. Then we should have 60 bars. This is also possible without any problem. So here we can see also the graph with 1 minute time resolution. And I mentioned it before, I just want to briefly show it. We have also a new REST module for this. So if you take a look at something like this is one example REST call that you can see to get, for example, the raw data. I'm using the agent ID and start and end times. So if I click enter, I will need to log in. So log in first, and then I will get the raw data. Depending on how much raw data it is, it might take a little bit longer, of course, but you will get this raw data in XML or JSON format, and you can use it for integrating or processing it in an external portal. And actually, it is planned that next year we will develop an Infosim portal for a web portal for flow analysis, where you will have maybe a little bit more functionality, and it will also be a little bit nicer to use than the StableNet GUI. So here you see it, the data in raw format. I won't go through any details right now because of time reasons, but I just wanted to show that it's possible, of course. Let us move on to the next topic that we have. So let us look at the SNMP live templates. For this, we will move to the inventory, and I will just take one of the devices here, one of our Cisco devices, for example, Dallas, why not? And if I select here from the menu, I'll have a new menu entry, which is called Show SNMP Live Data. I'll get a new dialog that opens, and now I get to choose different things. First of all, I get to choose a template. Let's go with the interface template for now, which this is something that is familiar to all of you, I guess. And then I can specify an update interval. The update interval is disabled by default, but I can set it to update as low as every 10 seconds. At the moment the data is loaded, it will be displayed here. We support different types of SNMP data, more on this a little bit later. And you can see here we have the interfaces, the interface name, the description, MAC addresses where applicable, the admin operational state, including the color highlighting, and we have also the traffic values. You might have noticed that loading the data took a little bit longer. This is because we are calculating also relative values, so it's possible to define relative values as well, things like traffic. So we are reading the byte counters now, and in 10 seconds, for example, to be able to calculate the actual bit rate used. we have a template manager that is used where you can define which columns you want to read. So this is totally personalizable, customizable. You can see we have different templates that come shipped with the product. All these templates will be available the moment you install StableNet 8.2, your installation as well. And you're also free, of course, as with other templates, to define your own templates. We have a dedicated manager, as I mentioned, and let's take a look real quick on how an interface template looks in this case. So I can double click on it. It will be open. It's XML, like a lot of templates in StableNet. And you can see here we have the index of the table that we're looking at. We have different display types. We have the interface index type, for example, which will take the interface index, and based on the information we have from the discovery in StableNet, it will show you the interface name. We've seen this already in the GUI. We have the text, which will convert text from hex to string, so readable text. We have special type for MAC addresses, and we have also this special enum type where you can define mapping between numeric and string values. So you can map 1 to up and 2 to down, for example. And it's also possible here to define the background color. And this is very flexible since we're using the hex code, so you can define any possible color that you like. And as already mentioned, we also have the possibility to define relative values if you need. Best example, like here, byte counters. Okay, a very short summary of the live templates so that we have a little bit more time to also take a look at some weather map improvements and dashboard improvements. So let's move on to the weather maps. I will move to the network inspection for this, and let's start with this weather map. This is a very simple weather map that shows devices here in our router lab. I also turned on the traffic so that you can see which links carry traffic. I also have a group here where I grouped some devices. You can collapse or expand that group if you want. So this works as well. This is all, the grouping is available already in StableNet 8.1, by the way. And we can also take a look at some other features here. First of all, we can apply filters now. We have filters for nodes and we have filters for links. So let's apply the filter for nodes. Here you can use our tag filters. For more on our tag filters, you can also take a look at the StableNet 8 webinar that was held in March, I think. There we have a more detailed explanation on the tag filters. Here, we will just use filters that were already defined. So I will apply a filter on Router Lab. I tagged some devices to be part of Router Lab, and you've seen the moment I applied the filter, some devices disappeared. Most notably here in the group, we had Berlin before. Now Berlin has disappeared, and also the corresponding links have been removed. I will reset this this filter, and the same is possible also for links. So just going back to accept all. Now we will see all devices, and I can also apply a filter to the links. And I defined previously interface speed 100 megabit filter, which will, as the name says, will filter on interfaces that have this speed. So you can see all other interfaces are not shown in the GUI. And since we have this filtering, I know it also from other applications. Sometimes you wonder what is going on. It doesn't seem to make sense. We have added the legend here so that you can see if you have any filters active. So the filter will show you, for example, here, hey, you have a link filter that is active, or a node filter for that matter. There are a lot of other very nice features and weather maps also available in 8.0. As I mentioned, you can add tables, you can add graphs. You already know you can group elements. Groups can even be cascaded and so on. So if you're interested, I can recommend again to take a look at the webinar that we had on StableNet 8 earlier in the year. There's one last thing that I want to show you about the weather maps. We have a feature that we call live weather maps. So you know the weather map here is kind of static. The status will be updated. You will see live interface traffic, of course, but the nodes and links will not change. And this is possible. It's possible to create live weather maps, dynamic weather maps, where the content will change depending on the status of your network or depending on whether elements get added or removed. This is available in the inventory. In the inventory is very similar to the neighborhood graph that you already know. So I don't think we need to take a look at it here in a lot of detail, but I want to show that this is possible to integrate also in the dashboards. So if we go back to the measurement view, you can see here I have created a dashboard for this webinar, and here we have two dynamic weather maps. The first one shows devices, and the second one shows the interfaces of those devices, and it's filtered on router lab devices. So we have, now you can see we have 6 devices, I guess, and some number of interfaces here. Now, this is based on router lab filter, so I could tag router lab tag, so I could tag more devices to be router lab, and in that case, the devices will show up here. So I know that London, for example, is missing here, and Berlin. So what we're going to do, just to demonstrate it, we will take Berlin and London and set this new tag. So I can select manage tags on the devices in this case. And I can choose for the NFC to add some new devices, some new tags, sorry, on these devices. So I can say, okay, these are part of router labs or core router lab devices. And with the next update here, you will see more devices and also more interfaces. Maybe I can pop this out so that it's a little bit easier to see. So we already can see it here. We have also Berlin and London here. This is a very simple test that I made, or demonstration that I made with tags, so that I can show it really quick. But you can imagine you can do this also based on new devices that come into your network, and the links will also be automatically detected and plotted, or devices getting moved, devices state getting changed from testing to production, for example. And also the same here in the down part of the dashboard for interfaces. I wanted to show you that it's possible to also add other elements than just devices. So in this case, we have interfaces, but you can also add other modules. You can add all types of measurements. A lot of elements that are possible in the weather maps will also possible in these live weather maps, and they will be refreshed and updated accordingly. So I think we already stepped over the 5 minutes we said we overstepped. So but a lot of information. I hope it was useful for you. Dietmar?
You're handing over to me to even have more time. Well, actually, you're wrong, Vlad. You're still within the 5-minute limit, so we're almost at 4 minutes now. So thank you very much, Vlad, and for all of you to see, and hopefully you're able to download that. I have uploaded the slides Vlad has been using in the handout section. So if you're interested in the slides, feel free to download them right now. Well, before we dive into the Q&A session, it's only going to be 2-3 quick questions this time. Just 2 announcements. We have released the service update for StableNet 8.1.5 today. So this update is available through the support portal. And for those of you who want to inform them right now, I'm just uploading the release notes to the handout section, so they should be available for download momentarily. And this brings us to, actually a number of people have asked this, so this brings us to our top question. When is the new version 8.2 going to be released? And it's going to be released next week, Wednesday, which is December 6th. So if you are on our release mailing list, then you will get an email probably in the morning of next week, Wednesday. And then the files will be available again in the support portal. Well, Vlad, actually I have just one additional question that has popped up from a number of attendees. So I thought it might be a good idea to pick this one and answer it publicly. Regarding the update to version 8.2, are there any special procedures, recommendations, hardware changes, etc., etc.? Is there anything that you need to have in the back of your head when you're updating to 8.2?
Yes, there is actually a recommended update path. So If you want to update to 8.2, you should update to 8.15, the version that has been released today first, and then from there on you can update to 8.2. The hardware requirements are the same as for 8.1, so no change there.
Okay, so you need to download the service release we have released today, and then you're all set for the version 8.2, which is next. It's going to be released next Wednesday. So thank you very much, Vlad. If you would advance one more slide, just to let our audience know, we have, of course, more information on StableNet available. So feel free to visit us at infosim.net and visit our resource section. And well, thanks again very much, Vlad, for the session. Thanks everyone for joining us today. As I've mentioned earlier, we have recorded this webinar. It's going to make it available to all of you tomorrow via email, and we will keep open the session for a few more minutes. So if you have any additional questions, don't be shy. Feel free to type in and let us know. If we can't answer them right now, we will follow up with you after the webinar. Okay, well, Vlad, any final words from your end?
I just want to thank everybody for joining and for the attention, and we will, as always, more than happy to hear your feedback on this webinar and also on the new release, of course. Thank you.
Okay, well, this concludes our session for today. So thanks again for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.